You're fired. That was the topic of an email I got this morning talking about the latest round of layoffs from Amazon, and we're starting to see these headlines come in more and more often. I had planned on today being a day where I don't do anything with the camera, but when I saw that email and that subject line, I decided that today was the day to make this video. It was also the topic of a conversation I had at my work a few months back. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit today about the experience of getting laid off. It's gonna suck, but it's gonna be okay. I don't care if this video gets 2 views, if it helps one person get through a weird, unsettling, anxious time in their life, then it'll be absolutely worth it to me. I just want to speak openly about my experience, and maybe I have a few insights that could help somebody else get through a tough day or a tough week as they go through a transition in their life. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think the layoffs are going to continue. Then I'm going to talk just a little bit about some best practices and tips and tricks and things that I have done to make this a little easier on myself. I was relatively prepared for this, and I think I've done a pretty good job at 3 things. And that's not getting anxious other than the first couple of days, never getting depressed, and never getting bored. So I just want to share a few things that I think could be valuable to somebody else who's going through this type of situation, or if you know somebody who's going through this type of situation. I think it's going to become more prevalent in the next few months, and so I think we should just get out in front of it and be prepared for it. So why do I think the layoffs are going to continue? Well, it's just sort of what happens during an economic cycle. And why do we have an economic cycle right now? Because the Federal Reserve is in a fight with inflation. We have inflation for a lot of different reasons. Just to sum up, we printed a bunch of money, we handed a bunch of money out to people who spent it. We had the world's biggest factory. China was closed for a while, and then we had a little bit of a conflict going on with Russia, who is a very upstream supplier of many commodities that go into everything we consume. So you had elevated demand and constricted supply. So when the supply and demand don't match, you get price movements, and we have inflation. So the Fed has ways of fighting inflation, and their main tool is interest rates. Why do they want to increase interest rates? Well, because it pushes demand down. If your ability to demand something or to buy something is a function of your ability and willingness to do it, part of that ability is obtaining finance, right? We don't just pay cash for everything we get. So one good example is the housing market, right? The housing market is cooling because interest rates are rising. You can get less house per your monthly payment than you could before. When interest rates were at 3.5, you could get a lot more house given the amount of money that you can bring in from income every month than you can with interest rates at 7%, because there's that much more money going towards your interest payment than paying down your mortgage. So you demand less house, you demand less of the things to fill up a house when you buy that house, and it sort of cools the economy, and that's where we are now. I think the layoffs are going to continue because of the tightening and the interest rate hikes that are already in the pipeline. They've been doing it for a while now, and so now we've reached a level where this is going to continue. And a lot of times what they do is they overdo it, right? They overdo it because they're afraid of inflation getting out of control. Inflation is like, it's been said that it's a lot like getting pregnant. It's tough to get a little bit pregnant, just like it's tough to get a little bit of inflation. So the Fed wants to hike interest rates to cool demand, but also to bring wage growth down, right? When you get higher wages, you buy more stuff, demand goes up. And then when demand goes up, the price of those things go up, so you demand more wages, and you get into this thing called a wage price spiral. The Fed is trying to short circuit that process right now, and that's why we have a little bit of softening in the economy, and I think the layoffs are going to continue. I am certainly not here to talk about fear-mongering or any of this stuff. I don't think we're looking at another replay of 2007, 2008. It's tough to identify where there's this excess out there. We haven't gotten into a ton of debt. We haven't lent money to people who really can't afford it. We're not really there. But we're starting to see these things happen in the banking sector, and these things might have knock-on effects to the rest of the economy. We're starting to see pretty heavy layoffs in the tech sector, and these things could spread to other sectors as well. So I think it's going to continue, and getting laid off is just something that happens, and I think we can be prepared for it and go about it in a way that it can be actually an opportunity for us. So next, I just want to talk about a few tips and practices and habits that I have gone through over the past couple of months, just to sort of put it out there for people who might be experiencing such a similar thing. This is not going to be a video on job search or any of that. You know, you want to use your network, you want to play the numbers game when you apply for jobs, all things like that. All that information is out there. What I want to do is just talk about the experience openly, the ways that I have looked at it, and share a couple of insights that might make your journey through this weird and unsettling part of your life a little bit more bearable and a little bit more valuable to you. If at any point my tone comes across as preachy or lecturing, please don't take it that way. This is just me basically talking into the camera and talking to perhaps my future self. If I forget all this stuff a month from now, if I'm down and can't find a job, then I want to be able to remember what I'm saying. So these are just things that I think could help people out, and little insights and way that I've been going about thinking about this that I think could be beneficial to people. The first thing I would say is, do not take this personal. I have learned that organizations are a lot more like teams than they are families. So it's not like you're being betrayed by part of your family. You're just getting traded by a team. Think about a football player who gets traded to another team. He's still a good player. A lot of times teams get rid of their best players because they want to free up cap space and they want to make room for other expenses. So don't take it personal. It's not about you. It's just about the cross structure of the business and the way the strategy is moving forward. It's okay. You know, when I was laid off, they laid off a few other people that were much smarter than me, and it's just the way things work. So the best way that I can deal with this is to take this as an opportunity. Take it as an opportunity for introspection, for learning about myself, right? Going from a job to another job immediately is probably good. I mean, it's certainly good for your bank account and for your finances, but in a way, it's almost like jumping from one relationship to another without having time for yourself to think, to reflect on what you've learned in the past. And just going from one to another is not good in a relationship. Everybody knows that, and yet we do it with jobs. The next thing that I would recommend is just to focus on gratitude. When I got laid off, I was just happy that I didn't have to, you know, figure out where my next meal is coming from. And I know that that's not the case for a lot of people. And, you know, I just felt blessed that I was raised in a way that I would, you know, practice some degree of financial planning and providence and save enough money so when, you know, something like this did happen, I was prepared for it. I could take my time and figure out the next step for me. I know that's not true for everybody. I know it's going to be very difficult for those people, but be grateful if you're in the other position. And if you are in a position where your finances are so stretched that it's really, really stressful for you, you know, you can't undo the decisions of the past, but I would just say if there is any room going forward to save some money or to not get involved in that, you know, lifestyle inflation. Every time you get a 10% raise, you don't need to go get rid of your car and get a 10%, you know, better car. I'm not trying to lecture anybody. Everybody's situation is different. What I'm trying to get you guys to do is focus on the gratitude and focus on, you know, if you have the opportunity to take some time, that's going to be good for you. This is going to be a very valuable part of your life. So because this is going to be a very valuable part of your life, I would definitely recommend writing in a journal. I know that seems kind of goofy and cliche to a lot of people. For others, it seems like a no-brainer. But I started writing in a journal for the first time basically ever the day that I got laid off. I remember exactly the day. I can go back and look at it. We went out to lunch. My buddy bought lunch for me. Justin, if you're watching, thanks, bud. We left the restaurant. Someone had parked 5 inches away from him, and he couldn't even get in the driver's side of his car. He had to go around to the other side. We were gonna go in, hoot and holler, and figure out who did it and why, but I just figured I had just gotten laid off. I don't want to go to jail the second day if it goes in a way that, you know, isn't expected. So, you know, but I'll always remember that. And I write down things like what books I read, what people I found that I think are inspirational or knowledgeable that I can watch on YouTube more, quotes that inspire me, things like that. I write all these things down because I think that we owe it to our future self to have to be, you know, to be able to document this exciting and interesting and nervous and different time in our life. So when we look back, we can draw from these experiences. So next I'm going to talk about just some best practices and kind of day-to-day things that I've been doing. I immediately saw this as an experience to work on myself. You know, when we're taken out of our 9-to-5 routine, and for me, that was a 15-year thing. This was my first job out of college, and I worked there for 15 years, so it's all I knew. You know, that 9-to-5 lifestyle was all of a sudden thrown out the window, and I realized I have so much work to do on myself. I've always been someone who I think has had my shit together, for lack of a better word. You know, I'm reasonably healthy, I read a lot, I do all these things. I don't really practice so much self-harm, more self-care, but I found that there was a lot of work I still had to do. Am I doing enough cardio? Am I eating enough vegetables? Am I reading enough books that are outside of the realm of what I read for work, right? Am I reading about things that I'm interested in and things that are not necessarily related to what I need to do on that Tuesday morning at work? So first of all, we're gonna have a lot more time on our hands, and I think that getting a new hobby, trying something that you always wanted to do, is great. For me, that ended up being YouTube. So when I first got the news, I just happened to be in the middle of this book, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And first of all, that book is amazing. I would recommend it to anybody. I think there's something in it for everyone, no matter where you are in your life. And I'll just say that, you know, he's become a very polarizing figure, but you wouldn't know why by reading that book. Everything that's been said in the media, whether it's the right wing or the left wing media, is not what you're gonna find in that book. So I would recommend it to anybody. But the reason I bring that up is because there's a quote in that book, and I wrote down the paraphrased, bastardized version of it, so I'm gonna butcher it. But it's basically, take a rope and throw it around a rock, lift that rock over your head and throw it out in front of you, and then pull yourself relentlessly towards it. And so I think that having a new hobby or a new goal or something you want to focus your time on is kind of like that. For me, it was learning how to make YouTube videos. I had two goals that became very clear to me in the first week. One was I wanted to learn how to make YouTube videos, and the other was I wanted to volunteer more. And that's something that I still need to do, but I plan on doing that in the next couple of weeks here. So just find a new hobby. It might be YouTube, it might be fitness, it might be gardening. I mean, the sun is coming out, and growing your own food, I promise you, when you eat that food, it tastes so much better knowing that you grew it and you cared for it and it gave you something to do and a purpose every day. A lot of what we do requires purpose. So find something to do that takes up your time, lets you learn, and gives you purpose. Now, in terms of opportunity and habits, this is a great opportunity to develop habits and structure in your life that will set you up for success going forward. But probably more accurately, it's an opportunity to make sure that you don't fall into bad habits, right? We make our habits, and then our habits make us. I saw that in a fortune cookie one time, and I meant to keep it. It's probably up as a bookmark in one of these books that I read half of, but I'm gonna try to find it. But we make our habits, and then our habits make us. So not only do you want to find time to develop good habits, but you want to avoid the bad habits. And I think that's probably most important right out of the gate. Like I said, I've been working at the same place for 15 years, and there have been waves of layoffs over those 15 years, and I, up until now, survived all of them. But I had always wondered what I'd do if I didn't survive. I always had this fantasy that I just wanted to sort of live in squalor for a week or two, right? I wanted to start smoking cigarettes and smoke them in the house, and smoke them in the car, and eat like shit. I wanted to get pizza and eat that all day and watch movies and not shower and then pass out, wake up in the morning, eat the pizza for breakfast that's sitting on the coffee table, and just see what it was like to live like that. I'm a little older now, and I don't think the people I live with would appreciate that too much, so I decided not to do that. There are other few things I decided not to do, and I'll give you a couple here. The first thing I would recommend is to not sleep in. Don't let yourself do it even once, because I know people that this has happened to, and then the next thing they know, they're sleeping till 11 or 12 every day, and you're just not gonna be productive or happy with your life if you do that. So I've slept past 8 o'clock maybe 3 times in the last couple of months. Just get out of bed, get something going, get a routine. The other thing I would recommend in terms of not doing stuff is cut your drinking in half. I was never someone who I thought drank too much, But it's more about making sure you don't go in the wrong direction. So the first way to do that is to not even stay where you are. Go in the right direction. So if you're someone who drinks a beer every day, drink a beer every other day. Just, you're going to have a lot more time on your hands, and don't fill it with, you know, getting lunch with somebody who has to go back to work and then coming home and having a few more and watching the next Marvel movie while you drink 4 more beers. Just don't do it. So don't sleep in and don't get drunk all the time. Easy enough. So now I want to talk about the do's. We already talked about doing a journal. I think that's an excellent idea. I would highly recommend doing that to anybody. The second thing would be very similar, but write daily to-do lists. I keep a little planner and I just write down all the things I want to do that day, no matter how small. You know, have a shake, go to the gym, read 30 pages, whatever it is. It gives you a sense of purpose throughout the day, and make sure that you don't let the day get away from you, and you feel those small sense of accomplishment as you check those things off. Second thing I would say is to reward yourself. You know, if you do what you say you're going to do, if you're the person you say you're going to be all day long, you want to reward yourself. Maybe that's eat some ice cream later, have that glass of wine on a Tuesday, watch that stupid movie for the 10th time. You know, just reward yourself. You are training your brain to experience pleasure when you do the things you say you're going to do. That's a good thing. Next, you want to develop a healthy diet of learning. And so to me, this is books, and it's usually YouTube videos. So with books, I just think it's important because you're not consuming the information passively. You're actually thinking the entire time you're reading a book, which is a great way to learn. YouTube is also great. There is a wealth of information out there on almost any topic, and you can learn things. You can, you know, discover new interests that you didn't even know you had. So what I like to do is I will take videos and I'll stuff them in my watch later queue, and I'll make sure to empty that queue every Monday morning and every Friday. So I empty it on Friday, I go through the weekend. If I see something that I don't have time to watch right then, but I'm interested in, or that I think has some valuable information, I'll put that in the watch later, and then Monday morning, I'll get up when I'm like drinking my coffee and hanging out, and I'll get through all those things. And then throughout the week, I will stuff that queue again with things that I think are relevant to me, that will help me in some way or give me some new knowledge that I didn't know about, and then I'll empty that on Friday. So it gives me something to do on those specific days. One final thing that I think is really important to get in the habit of during this time in our lives is to practice feeling uncomfortable. This could be anything from going to the gym, doing cardio, taking a cold shower, but also things like talking to strangers. Talk to every person you see. If they don't want to talk to you, you'll know right away, hopefully. But talk to people in the sauna. Talk to people in line at the coffee store. Make small talk. You'd be surprised how much people just want to have their story be heard. Everybody's looking to talk to somebody, maybe. If they're not, whatever. But when you talk to people, it forces you to get out of your comfort zone, but also you will put yourself in a position to learn something. Assume that every single person you talk to knows more than you about at least one thing, because they almost certainly do. So this is not an exhaustive list or a comprehensive list. It's just a few insights that came to my mind, you know, over the course of the last couple of months, and I just figured I'd put them out there, start the conversation. Hopefully a few of these, even maybe taking one of these, will help somebody through a weird, you know, difficult transition time in their life, and might be beneficial to somebody. If I think of any more that I think are really useful that I forgot to put in the video, I'll just throw them down in the comments. You guys certainly do the same. If you have been in this situation, if you know anybody who has, if there's just something that you come across that you think would be helpful to someone in that situation as they transition into the next thing, throw those down in the comments. Let's start the conversation, and hopefully we can help somebody out here. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck out there. Peace.